It's a beautiful house. Okay, what style is it? Yeah, it's kind of English, it's kind of European. Would I buy it? Hell yeah, I'd buy it. This thing is awesome. First flaw, if there is one. This is a detail that oftentimes gets taken out of historic houses because we don't really know what to do with them. You know, I'm just in one room in the house and already I'm seeing 10 details that are really fun. Sorry, I got distracted there. I'm kind of stoked sitting there going, oh yeah, they kept all the good stuff. They kept the things that matter. Oh, look at that. Hey guys, Brent Hull, Old House Handbook. Gonna look at a 1928 house. Joseph Pellick, awesome house. Come join me. Okay, we're in Fort Worth, an area called Park Hill. Park Hill is part of a community. There's a lot of building activity going on in Fort Worth in the 20s. Oil and gas, cattle, big industries here. And so you have areas and neighborhoods like this being built up and developed. Now, most of the houses in this thing are the 20s and 30s. So they're all period revival. You'll see Mediterranean, English, Tudor, colonial revival, all filling this neighborhood. So in the 20s, before the Depression, this area was hot. And the quality of building in here was also high because there's Berkeley and Mistletoe and some other areas over there that may be more middle class. This is more upper class. And so the quality of housing is a little bit higher. And we'll see that in this house as far as the quality of materials, the extra features that they put into it would have cost more money. Now, the other thing they would have done is been able to hire a guy like Joseph Pellick. Joseph Pellick, and I've worked on or been in about 5 or 10 of his houses in Fort Worth. He was a regional local architect. I consider him really talented, maybe not as prestigious as Staub, because Staub worked in Houston and Dallas and Fort Worth and other areas. Pellick was mainly here in Fort Worth, did commercial and residential. His practice is into the 50s and 60s, and so he was around for a while. One of those other houses, we ran into one of the guys who worked for Pellick, and a bunch of the plans were in there. So Pellick's important. Pellick's a guy who was a very talented regional architect. We'll see it here because his hand in crafting the ironwork and to doing, you know, even the overall design of this house is special and is unique. It's a beautiful house. Okay, what style is it? Yeah, it's kind of English, it's kind of European. It's not strongly anything, okay? Which is kind of part of the way they played around with it. Anyway, you're gonna see examples of an arch window like that is typically a more Mediterranean revival house. But the timbering in the stucco, the way they've accented the wood, the bricks between the timbers and that gable end, all are things that are better, right? They're really, really good details. The way the shutters are looking. The owner loves historic design, loves historic architecture, and so she's kept a lot of it original. So we'll go in and look at it, but let's go a little bit closer. I want to show you some of these details. Let's talk about materials, okay? You've got a slate roof, and not only is it a slate roof, but it's a variegated colored slate roof where you're actually seeing the purples and the reds. The red is actually not a common slate color, and so the fact that they've got reds in this thing is kind of that, you know, step up, you know, extra high quality. The brick on this walk that comes out, nice color, nice variation. There's slate on the front walk. If you look at the timbers though, in this timbering, and you'll see it on the side, you'll see it in these other areas, but look how they've actually textured the timbers so that they look hand-hewn, they look handmade. You'll also notice that there's pegs in there. You've got these big square pegs that are holding those timbers together. Again, another kind of fine feature, fine detail that is going on. Look at the use of the stone and the brick, okay? So this is a very typical period revival detail where they would mix in this kind of rubble stone with brick to kind of give it that texture of a house that's been changed over time. The house has been built up, just kind of grew up out of the ground. It kind of gives it more of a cottage feel. Look too at the cut stone around the entry. We've got a Tudor arch, that 4-centered arch, and then we've got spandrels here. We've got carved spandrels. So basically that little diamond, that little triangle right there is called a spandrel. And in this arch, okay, which is often called a Tudor arch, also called a 4-centered arch, because you have a radius right here, okay, it's actually going like this way. So there's a circle, then there's another radius from here to there. So there's another circle here. So you got 4 centers, 4 circles that make up this arch that support this opening. Look at we've gone back to the slate on the floor here. We've got some reds and some other colors here. This is kind of, as we look at the old house handbook, we think about, do we buy it? Is it worth it? How much work is there? Really, you're looking at a near perfect example, right? A near finished example that's been completely taken care of. So would I buy it? Hell yeah, I'd buy it. This thing is awesome. But at the same time, is the money worth it? I'm not even going to get into that. But this is a house that is super original that I'm looking at going, I don't see a flaw yet. I don't see a problem yet. I love the 6/1 windows. I love the shutters up there in that end. I love the roof materials. All the materials so far are really rich. And so, even this piece of stone here, called a rose stone, I think is what they were saying, the bloomstone or something, that has this special texturing and special detail. Right? There's just great elements and great details in this house. Come on, let's go inside. First flaw, if there is one, this is a new piece of glass. This is not a historic piece of glass. I'm sitting there trying to look at the different details on this stop here and find out if this was added later. I see some nail holes. What was here? I'd be curious to know. The ironwork on this house, and you're going to see ironwork in here that has great distinction. I like it in that screen door. You're going to see leaded glass. Look at the leaded glass details here. As we go into this little spot, this little nook here, I want you to look at this window, right? Look at this, a beautiful little reading nook, and look what they've done. They've done the leaded glass in here with a little candle and the little book setting up here. These are called false breaks, where you see the single pane and then the kind of almost is a repair that has taken place over time where they've leaded glassed it up. But I mean, what a great little framing, right? The framing this little nook, framing this little detail, and then all the small details that have gone into this room. One, we've got this fountain, okay? So there's looks like batch elder tile, looks like that kind of coloring and that kind of detail. But this is a detail that oftentimes gets taken out of historic houses because we don't really know what to do with them. To have that here in this little sunroom, the windows are really excellent. So you've got these casement windows, you've got textured glass in these windows. I mean, just kind of everything's dialed up to like a 10. Look at this, okay? So this is where the architect could have shown an opportunity to make an artistic statement and to build this in. So this is all handmade. This is all hand forged, the way these volutes and these circles come together from this one stem. That has to be done with a forge. And so you actually have to hammer the material, and so it has a great texture. And so then you see these bird motif, and whether that was something that was part of the original owner, we don't know, but there's artistic statements and things like this. There's interesting little columns, right? This little capital that's placed in here with this kind of faux stone and kind of how this is done together. Again, interesting, fun, creative, cool, kind of fun details that, I'm just in one room in the house and already I'm seeing 10 details that are really fun. But, I see a fireplace like this. This to me is an example of kind of, if I was going to build a new old house, right, this would be the kind of detailing I would want to go for. This is a fireplace surround that I think would have great precedent in a period revival house or a English house that someone's trying to build today. One, it's large. People like large fireplaces. Two, there's strapwork carvings in here. They've got the shield detail. The execution of this piece in cut stone, it looks like, is really good. And so this is something that, with the andirons and everything else, I think this works in the new house today. Great detailing here. Here's where you're starting to see a mix of the different architectural styles. Colonial Revival, English. I talked about the Mediterranean Revival with those round windows. And look at the cornice here with the dentils and the crown and everything else. So, if I was building an English Revival house, I'd have timber ceilings. I'd have more wood paneling and things like that. This fireplace is very English. That crown to me is not. That's more Colonial Revival. And then you've got these archtop windows. So it's European. And I think that is part of that revival time period where everything, looking back as an architect at that time, looking back at these kind of details and just having fun with them and enjoying them and wanting to recapture them. You see that especially true in this crown here in this dining room. One, we've got a pretty little arch we go through. This detail, okay, is like a Gothic detail. Now, You'll see this in some colonial revival houses that they'll have that kind of Gothic detailing. You'll see that in furniture. Remember, there's a Beatty Langley pattern book from the 1720s about Gothic architecture. And so there was a mix of colonial architecture with that. That's a wonderful detail. I would call it European. You see the 6/1 windows and kind of how that fun that is. One of the things you'll see, there's a lot of materials on this house. Okay, we looked at the leaded glass windows, we looked at the stone, we looked at the glass in general. If you look at the glass, looking out these windows and some of the other windows, you're actually going to see, and if we look at the leaded glass in this window, for example, you'll actually see, and you've heard me talk about it before, but that there's some purpling colors and some yellow colors. There's some false breaks in here or some break and leaded glass repairs. These are very subtle little details. If you remember the Staub house, the oriel window that sits above the stairs, it had this purple and yellow. And what they were doing was they were looking at historic glass. True historic glass would oftentimes discolor over time because of the sands, and the techniques really weren't perfected. And so you'd see these subtle changes in color. That's kind of what you're seeing here. That's what they're playing with, but it really meant to take you back in time. Going into the kitchen, sorry, I got distracted there. Remember that you'd oftentimes have this kind of door, this kind of service door that would service the dining room here, and then we go into a really good butler's pantry. Me being a builder looking to build new things, I'm looking at these examples of this cabinetry in order to build my kitchen cabinetry. They didn't do that, but these are the details that I'm looking at. We've got inset doors, we've got leaded glass, we've got this bracket detail that you've seen in other parts of the house, right? All of these things starting to come together, even the way that they've made these single panel doors and stuff like that. I look at this as original cabinetry, original detailing that should inform the kitchen. Now, the kitchen was done later. We're not going to spend a ton of time in there because it's a newer kitchen. It looks a little dated compared to everything else in this house. Let me show you upstairs, a bathroom and some doors, hardware upstairs that I think is special. We're not going to spend a ton of time up here, but I do want to point out that they've kept a lot of this woodwork stained, which is great. These are awesome doors. Look at the hardware, right? I would buy this hardware if they had it today. I think it's really pretty. It's hand hammered. It's a pretty size. The mortise lock, I think, which is a great lock that we don't do enough today. It's a mirrored door, which would have been something that was pretty newfangled in the early 1920s. You begin to see those in the catalogs in like 14, 15. The bathroom, the floors changed, but we really do have the original bathroom suite. I walk into this bathroom, I know it's original. Why? Because during the 20s, you begin to have all of these colors show up. Remember that basically most bathrooms were all white in the early turn of the century because there was a sanitation, let's keep things clean. So you had white tubs, white pedestal sinks, white toilets. But you get into the 20s and you begin to see a lot of colors, and there's blacks and greens and yellows and peach and all these fun colors, these brilliant colors that show up. And so this to me speaks to an early 1920s bathroom, and this would have all been a suite. So the pedestal sink would have matched the toilet, would have matched the tub, and all these things would have been put together in colors. Okay, sometimes these colors are pretty dramatic and crazy, but this one's nice. I like it. I do want to take you downstairs because there's some pretty awesome things, and even a prohibition bar. So on our way downstairs, I do want to take a second to look at this stair. Now, if you remember the stair at the Staub house, the way they had broken out these little pieces and done the ironwork, this is very similar to that. This isn't quite as dialed up as the one at the Staub house, but this is very special. There's little things, guys, and ironwork on this house is special. We looked at that little screen there, but when I look at this, I see things that are hand forged and handmade. And even the way they do this little volute with the little flower detail and the way this was hammered out, if you look at ironwork today, it's just not carefully made. And it's just pinched over, it's twisted. There is a beauty to this volute. It's the Fibonacci sequence, it's that golden ratio, the way this opens up, and you see handwork in here because the only way to get this flat edge right here, the only way to get that spread out is for you to heat it, lay it out, hammer it, and treat it like a petal or a flower or a leaf in order for it to be beautiful. So this is really pretty. Now, if you remember the house in Chicago we looked at, This would be the kind of stair that I would recommend for her house, because she had this colonial revival looking stair. This is much more European. This is much more period revival than I felt like hers was, just because she had so much period revival details, that Mediterranean look. This would have been perfect for hers. So far, right, I'm pretty excited about this house, if you can't tell. Why? Well, because there's decisions that happen on a house that's almost 100 years old that oftentimes they get torn out. The tile on this floor, my wife might say that's an ugly color. The stair railing, someone might say, well, that's not up to code. There's all these little reasons that people would give for ripping out and putting in new, but these people have fought, and like to say we got to fight for quality and fight for beauty. They've fought for the preservation of this house, and so we've got a lot of original materials in here. So already I'm kind of stoked sitting there going, oh yeah, they've kept all the good stuff. They've kept the things that matter. And so I'm looking at this going, there's a ton of original fabric in here. It gets me excited. This is a house I would love to live in. Okay, one thing I like about this that makes me feel like it's original. One, look how the stairs have changed. We've got this sawn stair baluster here, which is very cottagey, kind of fun. Notice the doors now are plank doors. So we had a single panel door upstairs. We've now got plank doors. And look at the rough texture on this plaster. It feels like it's a rougher texture, more appropriate for a basement. So I look at a lot of these things and I'm like, yeah, there's some fun stuff in here, fun details. We step down into this space here. Now here we've got the timbers on the ceiling that I talked about. We've got these Gothic arches, and look at this kind of inset detail they've got in the plaster. If you go to old English places, they oftentimes will have this kind of random pattern that was kind of thrown around a room. Awesome fireplace. Look how rustic that fireplace compared to how refined that fireplace mantle was upstairs. Here we've got one made out of hewn stone and rocks. I did mention the Prohibition bar. Oh, look at that. So there's the Prohibition bar behind here. Then we'll see it on the back side. It's planked and there's heavy hinges on the back side of this thing, but this would have been your Prohibition bar. Now, it's not hidden super well, but you can see that this kind of detail was put in. I think this is all original. Got the slotted screws. This is where this would have opened up. You would have kept this doors locked. You would have kept things inside here, all the liquor that you're gonna drink. And so kind of fun to have a Prohibition bar in an old house. Hey, before we go outside, look at this. This is the old milk box, right? That would have gone on this door. So, the milkman would have come and dropped the milk off there, and you would have left your bottles in there. He would have come put fresh milk in there, closed the door, all done from the outside. They used to deliver ice the same way, so kind of a fun, hint to the past. Now on the back side of this house, look at the detailing and that same kind of woodwork, the same kind of texturing of the wood that's on here and that's supporting this roof porch. One, it's a really pretty design. The way it supports it makes visual tectonic sense. You've even got the timber work on that garage. Now, if we go back here, I just want to show you an exterior space, kind of an outside porch, which would have been the way they would have lived out here. Because if you look upstairs, that space has been closed in. You can tell because they've got new windows in there. So that was probably an open porch above, just like we've got this open porch below, where we've got great kind of those French hexagonal tiles. We've got the stonework going on out here, the beadboard ceiling. This is where you would have lived in Texas, in the outside. Cool breeze trying to catch those things, but this kind of outdoor living space and the open one above could have been a sleeping porch probably historically. So we're on the back side of this house and we're still seeing really rich architectural detailing. We're still seeing there's a leaded glass window in that breakfast room that we can see out over that porch. We've got the 6/1 windows, this stonework that's still being incorporated into the brick. There's great details on this house. Even seeing it back here, 3-car garage that carries the same architectural design. They didn't skimp on anything like that. They even had a boiler or a chiller room that was a special mechanical space that they would have done. Not typical 1928. That it also speaks just to kind of the wealth and the prestige. Pool's obviously not original. That would have been done later, but really kind of an amazing house that we're seeing kind of that quality even back here. Okay guys, so as you can probably imagine, I'm a fan of this house. I think there's a lot of really special details. Maybe that's because Pellick was here. You know, if you look at Pellick or Staub or Dilbeck, these important houses that we've worked on that are important because this architect had this hand, right? They learned from the past. They were creative. Their creativity shows up in the architecture. Creating a house that is kind of better than most, right? It kind of kicks it up a different level. And so we have that here with this house in so many different materials. I mean, the roof, the bracketing, the woodwork, the materials, the artistry in the ironwork. So, you know, I'm buying if this is the house I'm looking at. I don't know what the costs are, but it is a special house. It's an important house, and I think something that any homeowner would be proud to own because there's just so much great history here. Now, almost 100 years old, and it looks like it's freaking brand new. If you were gonna, you know, pick things apart, if you're gonna look at things, I'm probably redoing the kitchen. I don't think the kitchen is at the level of the rest of the house. I mean, obviously it's completely workable, it's completely doable, but whoever did it didn't take their eye to the quality of everything else. And I think that one of the reasons it stands out is because everything else is so nice. There's been additions that have been changed, that upstairs back porch where the windows are put on there. Overall, this house is really amazing. I'm a huge fan. I love it. Hope you guys like this old house handbook. Hope you guys like me walking through these houses, checking them out, giving my opinion. This is a good one.